Europe is a very diverse continent. At a moment's glance, you would think otherwise, because 98% of the continent is white. But beneath all of that are hundreds of different ethnic groups, such as the Sami, Scandinavians, Germans, Poles, Slavs, further divided into groups such as the Western Slavs, the Eastern Slavs, and the Yugoslavs. Sometimes, ethnic groups get into conflict or are nearing conflict. This is called ethnic conflict and ethnic tension. A very famous example of ethnic conflict is the final weeks of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, when, after years of war and instability, Germans, Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians, Slavs, Romanians, Ukrainians, and Poles all began to fight with each other. But there is also another more modern example, the Yugoslav Wars. There are a few ethnic groups that you must first learn about in order to better understand the conflict. They are the Serbs, Slovenes, Croatians, Bosniaks, and Kosovars. Serbs were the dominant group in Yugoslavia, with the capital Belgrade located inside Serbia. Croatians inhabit the regions of Dalmatia and Slavonia. Croats and Serbs were closely related, but the key difference was their religions. While Serbs were primarily Orthodox Christian, Croats were mainly Roman Catholic. Then there are the Bosniaks, another South Slavic group who are primarily Muslim. Next are the Kosovars, the main inhabitants of Kosovo. The Kosovars are also primarily Muslim. I think you can see where this is going. After the formation of Yugoslavia, or at the time, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, which was later changed to Yugoslavia because that is the worst country name ever, the ethnic groups lived in relative peace, with a few independence movements here and there. Trouble began after the death of the man, the myth, the legend, Josip Broz Tito in 1980. Relations between the 6 provinces of Yugoslavia, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, and Bosnia began to strain. Croatia and the Autonomous Republic of Kosovo wanted more autonomy and maybe even the I word. Serbia, however, thought differently. They tried to strengthen their central authority to keep the union together, even if it meant having the other republics in a stranglehold. The leaders of Kosovo, Vojvodina, and Montenegro were forcibly ousted and replaced with more loyal representatives. The new president of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, changed the system so that Serbia had 4 votes in politics and everyone else had 1. Tensions continued to rise until June 5, 1991, the Slovenian Republic declared independence from Yugoslavia. A day later, on June 26th, Yugoslav forces began attacking Slovenia, but the Slovenes held their ground, and the Yugoslavs had to retreat. Before the fighting in Slovenia had begun, Croatia began an insurgency against the Yugoslav forces. Croatia, under the leadership of Franjo Tudman, began to secure its independence. Tensions between Serbia and Croatia were near their boiling point, and on the 25th of June, the same day as Slovenia, Croatia declared its independence from Yugoslavia. An all-out war broke out, with the main front line being in Krajina, a breakaway republic sponsored by Yugoslavia. The UN began to take notice and sided with Croatia, and blocked all weapon imports to Yugoslavia. The Yugoslavs also began to attack the south of Croatia, besieging the city of Dubrovnik. The Yugoslavs also captured the city of Vukovar and started a massacre of civilians in the nearby town of Gravovo. The UN negotiated peace between the 2 sides, but sporadic fighting continued until 1995.
Oj, Alija, Alija, ljudsina nas strašno, što ne može Srbina prodati za brašno.
On April 2nd, Bosnia also declared independence and began fighting with Yugoslavia in a Yugoslav-sponsored separatist state called Republika Srpska. The Yugoslav forces began to besiege the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo. Fighting continued for a while, with the Bosniaks and Bosnian Croats working together against Yugoslavia. Then the 2 groups began disagreeing and tensions erupted into war, with Croatia also getting involved. Things settled down by 1994, and the U.S. mediated the 2 sides. Bosnia and Croatia became allies again and began to fight the Yugoslavs. Then began the controversial NATO airstrikes. I should warn you that because I need the dopamine rush for my YouTube analytics, and also because I'm a clown, I will probably make some jokes here. I'm only trying to make light of the situation and not trying to offend anyone in particular. The US, France, UK, and Netherlands formed a group to send support to the Bosniaks, including artillery brigades and, of course, air support. The airstrikes inadvertently hit civilians, causing the Yugoslavs to paint the Westerners as war criminals, while the UN condemned Yugoslavia for its massacres of Bosnian civilians. Who was the bad guy? I'll leave that up to you. The airstrikes helped the Bosniaks gain ground, and Republika Srpska was forced to negotiate. The agreement created Republika Srpska as an entity within the newly formed Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1995. You thought we were done, weren't we? We still haven't talked about Kosovo.
Oj, Kosovo tjeplirije, dokąd nije ni bajra. Uciekaj od paska hije, ratne potrebleća.
So I still have to tread lightly here because a friend of mine has some opinions on the status of Kosovo. So please remember that this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. The previously mentioned Kosovars are a group that inhabit the southwestern part of Serbia. They are primarily Muslim, similar to Albania. Let's backtrack to 1990. The Serbian government has just withdrawn the constitution, the same constitution that gave Kosovo most of its autonomy. As a result, the government had more power over Kosovo and began to take away many of their previously enjoyed freedoms, such as freedom of press and the right to elect leaders to the Kosovite? I googled it and it's Kosovan. To elect leaders to the Kosovan government. As a result, the Kosovo Liberation Army, or KLA, was formed. KLA was a terrorist group that carried out attacks on the Serbian population. The KLA was made up of mostly Albanians, and their mission was to destabilize Yugoslavia as much as possible so that the US would do the thing that the US does and help them. This backfired, though, as the US and NATO said that the KLA was the main initiator of the violence and began to negotiate a ceasefire that lasted only 2 months. The US offered Yugoslavia an agreement that allowed the UN to put troops in Kosovo, allow UN forces to enter Yugoslavia at any time, and give UN-associated people immunity to Yugoslav law. Yugoslavia obviously refused, so the UN politely responded by doing it anyway. And then, when the Yugoslavs tried to stop it by force, the UN began bombing Yugoslavia, one of many reasons why I don't like the UN. After 15 months of conflict, a ceasefire came into effect on June 11, 1999, and the war was over, with heavy casualties, many of them civilian on both sides. There's also a war in Macedonia, but we don't have enough time for that. Just kidding. I'm not going to be like those other YouTubers who are like, we don't have time for that today. Like, yes you do. YouTube has no limit on how long videos can be, dingus. There's a video that's literally 25 days long. You're telling me that you can't make a 10-minute video? With that said, the Macedonia conflict is kind of boring. Because it was basically just an insurgency that happened for like a few months in 2001. I'm sure someone has made a more in-depth video about the Macedonia War, but I'm not that person. Yugoslavia continued its existence as Serbia and Montenegro until 2006, when it was dissolved into Serbia and Montenegro. The Yugoslav Wars were a terrible conflict and one of the deadliest since World War II, with many war crimes, massacres, and genocides. If you would like to learn more, I've linked my sources as well as some videos that go way more in depth than I ever could. Thank you for watching, and this has been Playhouse Films.